journey has been progressive. We're definitely not where we were 65 years ago. If you remember, 65 years ago, we had only one university, University of Ibadan.
Yes.
Today, we have over 300 universities in the country, besides the polytechnics, the colleges of education, the monotechnics, and so on, which are now going to thousands. So the country has progressed in general terms at the macro level. But we can still take it down to the level of bread and butter issues, and also in terms of integration. Yes, we can look at it. And let us not forget, we survived a major civil war. Many countries don't survive civil war, my sister. After civil war, the countries either scatter or continuously be in the spiral, the unending cycle of civil war. Look at the case of Congo. The war in Congo was there at the time we gained our independence, and that's why people like President Obasanjo were sent to Congo in 1960 to go and keep peace. But till today, there's war in that part of the country, part of the continent. So we've done relatively well, but we can interrogate the progress in terms of certain indices. Federation in terms of devolution of power, so the regions can have power to do certain things. For example, now, if a child is born today, that child is registered by NIMSI, a federal agency. If somebody dies today, under normal conditions, we're supposed to send that feedback to NIMSI. But in a real federal situation, these children were registered by a local government. And the local government, what I'm saying, there are areas where the federal, when you have 68 items on the concurrent, 68 items on the concurrent list, there are issues that should be left for the regions. For example, simple things like local policing. For a police corporal to do certain things, he must take permission from like that. And you go to UK, councils are building houses, local governments. All the houses belong to councils. And the fiscal regime itself, because two major things in governance is how do we share power, how do we share money. The 1979 Constitution was a good effort. But what was wrong with 1979 was the fact that when Murtala constituted the Constitution Drafting Committee, he said, don't go this way, don't go this way. No, when you are drafting Constitution, everything is on the table. Let people talk among themselves and agree. If you create areas that they cannot go into, then it means that you've already constrained them from being able to discuss and arrive at a consensus. So those are the things that were with the but of course, the 1999 Constitution became a terrible aberration because that opportunity to properly discuss, and it is said that when President Obasanjo even came into power, the Constitution was, nobody even saw what the Constitution really was until he sat down, then they started to modify it, to take care of some things. So the military constitutions, as good as the military set up a lot of institutions, were constitutions that were made at a time when there was authoritarian rule. And you go to discuss the way forward for the country, but you are watching your back because you were put together by a man with a pistol in his pocket. You are not allowed to discuss certain things. So that's why you see people clamoring to say, let us see if we can go back as much as possible to what the country originally was. What we have now as Constitution, my sister, is a major derogation from 1960 and from 1963 Constitution. We have moved away fundamentally from what our fathers agreed.
The principles of
look,
federalism.
yes, and the point I'm trying to also struggling to put in an elegant manner, is the fact that the founding fathers, every country has founding fathers. Anybody who thinks Nigeria did not have founding fathers is being ahistorical. It's not being truthful. We had people who were very much passionately ethnocentric, but at the same time nationalistic. There's a meeting point, a point of convergence. They believed in their background. They believe in their history. They believe in their identity. And now they find themselves struggling to be a Nigerian. So their statement that is attributed to Chief Awolowo, that Nigeria is a mere geographical expression, so not Chief Awolowo alone. Tafawa Balewa's one was more fierce. He said, these British people have since 1914 been trying to make us one people. They have not succeeded, but we will try to be one people. And so the options, there is a conference that is not much spoken about in these three books, the Ibadan Conference of 1950, 1951. When Zik used that word, obnoxious, the British said, okay, if it's obnoxious, you talk among yourselves. So every part of Nigeria brought the ethnic, the traditional rulers, the political elite. They sat down in Ibadan and they discussed, and the British watched them discussing, and they agreed in the Ibadan Conference that we want to stay together. Then after that came the other constitutional orders. So, but we have moved away. We are now very sensitive, very insular. We don't want people to talk. But our fathers were talking people. They spoke among themselves and agreed among themselves. So Nigerians must learn to talk about how the future can be. It's not for us. Some of us, we are quarter to the latter part of our lives. And many of our citizens are also in the fourth quarter of their lives. So the discussing is not about us. It's about our children. About our children's children. If a policeman, if my state governor cannot be able to enforce security in his state, and he has a big title called security officer, yet he cannot tell a police constable, say, arrest this man. Because the DPO can say, don't arrest him. You listen to the DPO, not the governor. But if that scenario is there, then how can you curtail crime? Or if you produce whatever we from Niger Delta, before, if you produce, what the order was, fiscal regime, you keep 50%. Then you share 30% with a distributive pool. Everybody benefits from it. Then 20% goes to the center. Today, they do give us 13%, and people think it is enough. So if these things change whimsically, what people don't realize is that every part of Nigeria is heavily endowed. Did we know to this extent that northern Nigeria or the states, many of the states have a lot of solid minerals? Look at Ondo State, the bitumen deposits of Ondo State, second largest in the world. And we have every kind of mineral. So every state in Nigeria can survive. If the incentive, there must be incentivization to be productive, not coming to Abuja, end of every month, you go to Minister of Finance, then you see like thrones, sit for Accountant General of Abia State, sit for Accountant General of Adamawa State, Akwa Ibom State, coming down like that up to Zamfara State. They go there, and they say, this is how much came in, let's share. We don't discuss how it was produced. Dialogue. There's nothing as greater than dialogue. Julian Nyerere said something once. He said the true African and the African political worldview is in the villages to sit down and talk. He said the system of voting is alien to Africa. And if you go back in the village, they don't. Before now, maybe with the Europeans now, they've taught us how to say, raise your hand. Raise your hand. You don't do that. The village elders come and sit down together. They say, this is what we want to discuss. They will quarrel, they will disagree, and by the end of the day, they will agree. There was nothing to say, oh, those who don't want to support this person, raise your hand. Now we have a kind of politics. We're trying to adapt to it. That's why African countries must be able to define their own political identity. Because Nyerere said in his own ethnic group, the word, my opposition party, opposition leader, there was no word, there was no synonym. The simple word is enemy. So he said, the British, why are you opposed giving us a system where there will be an institutionalized opposition leader? Anything I say, his duty is to oppose me. In my village, my language, that person is nearest to it is my enemy. So we have a system where we must dialogue. And he said the true African is someone who sits under the moon and talks until they agree. This country, we are losing something, and that is one thing that our fathers passed on to us, the ability of dialogue. So we must, there's a parliament now, there's a National Assembly, but why the proponents and the protagonists of restructuring are hammering on it? Because the constitutional order that we're operating in the National Assembly is a constitution that was inherited from a military regime, from an authoritarian system in which people do not freely sit down together. Not because President Jonathan is a close friend and brother of mine. The nearest who got to this kind of talking since after the First Republic was the 1914 Constitutional Conference, where 494 of the best brains, representing the broad spectrum of the country, came together to sit down and talk. Nobody restricted them, talk about anything. And then they agreed on some things. Some things they did not to agree, let's leave this one. Some things they said we can't talk about it. That was freely dealing in a democratic order. So we must be able to talk among different people. What do we want? Now what happened with 2014? Some people tend to blame President Jonathan unfairly. Because even some of us who are close to him have engaged him. President, he could have had the courage just to, but he said no. The report came out at a time when political campaigning had started. National Assembly was not consistent in sitting. People had to go back and campaign to come back to government. So he said, look, was such that morally it will not be right. I can be accused of rushing this thing through at the time. I think he believed, he hoped that he would come back. So because the conferences, the people in the conference, the chairman, Professor Akemi and all of them, and they wrote, if not only the report, but the areas they agreed, they even drafted proposed legislations. But Parliament was not in a state of sitting at the time. So he waited for Parliament to come back, and in the handing over documents, so one of the documents that was handed over, the APC set up a committee APC did not want to touch the 2014 conference because they felt that it was a PDP document. But what was not realized, the government said continue. But APC set up what they call the El-Rufai Committee on True Federalism, headed by Nasir El-Rufai. And that report, perhaps, is the most revolutionary report in this country. The reports completely wanted true federalism. What federalism should be, as defined by Alexander Hamilton, defined by the founders of the American system and the Federalist Papers. Those who wrote all those defined, articulated what federalism should be, which is what we are trying to pursue, to follow. And that report was not even, unfortunately, presented properly to the political party, nor to the president at the time, late President Buhari. For some reasons, some people sat on the report. People argue that, there's a National Assembly that is discussing. They are doing amendment. But the civil society, it's a National Assembly, we don't really, we like some of you people, but your sitting arrangement is based on a constitution that came from a military authoritarian system. So what needs to be done, maybe without wasting spending our money, take the 2014 National Conference report. Okay, if you are not happy because that was PDP, why not what of the El-Rufai report, which is an APC document? take these two documents and panel people and say, please sit down, synthesize and harmonize. And after that, government can take further action. That, to my view, that is the best way to go forward. Not to call another money gobbling conference. I have a different mindset. We have different, you see, countries are very unique. There are virtually no two countries that have the same historical, cultural, ethnic, religious experiences. There are always nuances. So people of any country must define how they want to live together and what will make them to live together. Now, my view of constitutionalism is for us to have a Nigerian constitution, not French system, not British system, not American system. What do I mean by Nigerian system? In Switzerland, they have the cantons. You rule and they change it. Okay, 1 year, after 1 year, another person, the next canton takes over. Next canton takes over. At the time, it was even 6 months. So we must have our own system. Like the South African constitution is quite novel because the process of bringing back minority rule, black majority rule, ensure that they negotiated in a way that the whites should be protected. So I don't think we need to follow American Constitution. I don't think we need to follow Westminster Constitution or the French. You know, French have president and prime minister. We should have a Nigerian system. What we, because now let me put on another hat, the hat of Pan-Niger Delta Forum, where I'm national leader and national chairman. Yes. What we proposed is that let us have a regime where the state structure will exist, but the geopolitical zone, 6 of them, will be administrative units that can coordinate federal government projects and also form bases for these various units inside to cooperate among themselves. Let it be entrenched. But the federating units will be the states. And at the same time, strong devolution of power. And at the same time, let the fiscal regime be in a way that these federating units will, as much as possible, control their resources. You prescribe the tax. You can say if you produce oil, bring 60%. Could even be that. In which case, the region or the state will have only 40%.